So hi and welcome to the Rock in the Journey podcast. Something Erika and I are really interested in is how people choose to live differently, or maybe just against the kind of conventional way that people might suggest that we live, and particularly as we get older. So today we're delighted to be joined by Julia Collis. She's from Jetty Social, and her mission is to make single life socially acceptable. Hi, Julia.
Good morning. Hi there.
Hi. Lovely to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about this.
And we're excited to hear. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself. And so why is single life important to you? And how have you got to where you are now?
Okay, well, I never set out to be single. And I certainly didn't expect to still be single at 59. My journey is probably a little more complex than some in that I didn't think I wanted children. I was living a really happy early 20s life. And then I had endometriosis and I ended up at 25 with a total hysterectomy. And, you know, it was rubbish, but I was well. So I just got on with life. But the word they used when this happened was female castration, which is a brutal phrase at any time of life, but particularly when you're young. So I had this feeling of not being a complete woman. And I thought, oh, no man's ever going to want me. I'm rejected. I'm on the scrap heap. You know, I'm 26 at that time. And then I met my husband-to-be, Mr. Collis, and he whisked me off my feet, got married in a hurry. You know what they say, marry in haste, repent at leisure. And we found out we weren't suited. So we got divorced, and with that, an even bigger feeling of failure. So then I went a bit party central, was in my prime, had lots of dates, lots of relationships, but never really, really happy. And I think that's because I wasn't me. And then I hooked up with a guy, totally loved him, but it wasn't right. So again, I was, how old was I then? Early 50s, no, just 50. We split up and I thought, I'm going to try being solo. And yeah, you know, I just had this amazing life, this amazing journey, dates along the way for sure. I'm not anti-dating, but I want to live my life and not have to compromise it to suit somebody else.
Quite a sort of powerful mission now to, I guess, support other single women on the journey, either to be single and be happy with that, or equally to be comfortable dating, you know, maybe finding a partner in later life. So talk to us about that. And I'm really interested, I suppose, as a single woman at the moment, the whole complexity of online dating. I tried it a couple of times, not for me, but you have other ways of bringing people together. So I'm fascinated with that.
Okay, let me break that down a little bit about this becoming my mission. I'm passionate that as midlifers, and for me, midlife is probably 40 to 70. If you look in the dictionary, midlife, if you look up midlife on Google, if you look at midlife on Google, the first thing you see is midlife crisis. No, midlife should be the prime of our life. And just because we're single, we shouldn't become invisible to society. And there are all sorts of unconscious bias out there, which when you're single, make it very hard to be visible. I'll take the workplace. As a single person, it's automatically assumed that you've got nowhere to rush off to. That as we make adjustments for working mothers, which is very important, and I totally support it, but they have a reason to leave early. They have a reason not to answer the phone later at night. If you're single, it's assumed you can be there, that anyone can call you.
Don't have a life. You don't have a life other than work.
Yeah. And even further than that, I had a CEO. I had a pay rise. It wasn't a very big pay rise, so I asked for more. And he just turned around and he said, I get your point, but you don't need any more money. There's only you. I mean, I was just sort of shocked. It's like, well, that's not fair. And you don't know what I do with my money. And, you know, promote me or give me a pay rise based on my merits, not what you think are my social requirements. So these biases are going on all the time, and I want to break them down. You know, when we're no better than anybody else, but we shouldn't be considered any worse than anybody else.
Julia, who do you think the bias is coming from? Is it just society generally? Is it other women? Is it men? What?
It's everyone. A lot of it is unconscious because it's society, and you know, women have been brought up to be married, to have the children, keep the home. That was my mother's generation, and thank the Lord that I'm in that generation where it was expected that you do go out to work, you do have a career. But there is still the expectation that as a woman, you need to be in a couple. And unfortunately, a lot of married women, you probably heard the phrase smug marrieds, a lot of the married women don't want you anywhere near their husband because they think that you're out to steal him. Well, newsflash, I'm not. You can have your husband. I just happen to like male company. And I think we are better combined. You know, I have lots of male friends. I never set out to be single. And like I said, and I'm good company. Men are good company. Doesn't mean I want to hop off to bed with them. So there is unconscious bias and there is conscious bias. And I just want a seat at the table. You know, I want to be invited to events. I don't mind rocking up alone, but that took a lot of practice. And what I want to do is help men and women get confident in turning up alone, in buying the single ticket. And you know,
Debbie and I were talking about that actually, Julia, the other day around the, you know, some people are very comfortable spending time on their own, going out for dinner on their own, traveling, going on holiday on their own. The more you experience it, I did it a lot for work originally, and that gave me a lot of confidence, and I do it. I'm very happy to travel on my own, do and pretty much anything on my own. But a lot of people aren't, and that's for some people can be quite scary. To think of that, and how am I seen if I sit in a restaurant? You know, how do people perceive me? There's a lot of projection, I think, going on there.
Oh, completely. And you know, even trying to buy a single ticket sometimes is really hard, especially in the London theatres. You will find you can't leave one seat at the side of you, because you buy one seat and then that means there's an odd seat and they won't let you buy it. Or you do get the odd seat behind a pillar. And it's kind of like, no, my money's as good as
great.
You know, my money.
Julia, can I just ask you, just going back to the dating thing, which is something I found very interesting. And as I said, I'm in a relationship, but I see this through lots of my girlfriends at the moment. But you say on your site that this whole kind of online dating thing can actually be very negative for your mental health. And that's something I hadn't really thought about before, actually. It seems obvious now you say it, but could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, you know, for sure. We're human beings. We like to be liked. And when you go on the dating app, you put up your profile, your best photo, even if it was from 5 years ago, you know, you're in your best light, you've got your ring light on and whatever, and you put your best photo up. But it's so judgmental. We are purely judging people on what they look like. And I've never done Tinder, but this whole swipe left, swipe right thing, there's more to me than this. And as I get older, this is not as good as it was 20 years ago. It's just different. And that rejection, no matter how rough and tough and, you know, confident we may seem on the outside, if you don't get the likes coming through, it's hard and it's horrible. Or even worse, you enter a conversation, you're having their emails, or you might have, sometimes they have messenger services in there, and then someone ghosts you. It's like, what did I do? What did I say? And then you start examining yourself and you start blaming yourself, you begin to feel unworthy, and you feel, oh, I'm undateable. You know, it's a horrible, horrible place to be. Whereas what I'm trying to do through Jetty Socials is get people together, get to know each other, you know, and understand, like in the old days, you would meet at work, you'd meet down the social club, you'd meet in the pub, and you got to know somebody. And then you looked past the physicality of everything. It was all about liking the person. And I think that's what we're missing in today's society, that it can become so shallow that when you're just choosing a partner on what they look like. And men, what's this about? Men want to trade up. They think by trading up, they can go younger, they can go prettier, they can go more plastic or whatever. It's kind of like, no, you know, I'm a much better person now than I was 20 years ago. Sure, I'm a lot more interesting. And I think we've got to stop looking past the superficial.
And I guess also it's true that men experience that, the same that we're experiencing, to be fair, that, you know, men will get ghosted by women.
Yeah.
And we as women are judging men.
Completely.
Exactly the same. So, I mean, it's kind of both ways. I think that's the challenge with internet dating, isn't it? That we're all looking at a very small, narrow perspective on the person, as you say, primarily face. There's a little bit of personality coming through in what people post, isn't there?
Yeah.
It is hard. I agree with you.
It's really hard. My brother, he's been in relationships forever, and he said, Julia, you're so shallow. You should go out with somebody who does a totally different job. He thought I should date a dustbin man. And it's kind of like, not too sure about that, but I get your point that I should look beyond the normal, because I always used to date the same types. And that was interesting for a while, but there has to be, for me, there has to be charisma. And that charisma to me might be different to your charisma, what you look for in charisma or something like that. But it's about meeting somebody in the flesh, in reality, because online you can be so fake. You can put up a photograph of 20 years ago, or your brother or whoever. And if you can't hold a conversation, for me, if there's no chemistry going on, if we can't have a laugh in real life, so I can see the whites of your eyes, then it's never going to work for me. And that's why I want to move people from the digital to the in real life.
Actually, it was really interesting. You know, the relationship expert, Esther Perel, she says one of the key things you should do when you meet somebody is not go off and kind of privately, you know, meet together, but introduce the person to your circle, because you'll find out so much more about that person, about how they treat the waiter, how they treat your friends. There's so much more kind of richer information about somebody. Whereas if you and them, you're not really seeing what the whole person is about.
No, and everyone's on their best behavior. And, you know, I'm anti, if you do internet dating, please, please, please don't let your first date be dinner. You know, you're investing so much in that actual situation. There's the outfit, there's the planning, there's the cost of the meal. And then if it's not going right, you know, I just feel so fed up about it and so cheated. Whereas if you're just going to have a coffee, the investment is less, the risk is less. And if it doesn't work out, it's like, whatever. But if I've wasted a whole evening and my best outfit, and I always pay my way, and it's cost me 50 quid for dinner that, you know, was just total waste. That feeling of letdown, to come back to your point about mental health, it can't help but infuriate you. And again, you begin to feel like you've wasted your time. So I was going to say get physical then, but that's not quite what I mean. Get away from the digital, get into the real life world.
What do you find? You said you're really happy now, you know, in the last, say, 9 years that you've been single. What do you enjoy most about being single, Julia? And what are the, I guess also, what are the challenges, if any?
Freedom. Freedom is what I love. Freedom to do what I want, not quite when I want, because I still work full time as well, as well as having this mission, this side hustle of Jetty Socials. but it's the freedom to do new things. I'm having a year as yes, because it's a significant birthday. And if anyone's asked me to do something and I can legitimately do it, I can physically do it, and it's something I'm vaguely interested in, I'm sort of saying yes. And having that freedom, not having to check with someone, not having to, you know, ask permission to go and do it, it's opening up my world to such richness. And I learn something every day, you know, and I want other people to be able to do that. So one of the best things about being single is the freedom. The second thing is sleeping on my own. You know, sleep deprivation is the worst thing in the world, whether someone's snoring or whether they've got to get up stupidly early for work. You know, that whole environment of sleep for me, you know, I always said if I meet another guy, there'll need to be 3 bedrooms, mine, his and ours, you know, because I think it's important to have your own environment. There are
sorry, Julia, what about the challenges? Because loneliness is, as we hear, we're led to believe, is a kind of huge issue for the society now. And there is some suggestions that people living on their own are, the research is really mixed on this, but that people living on their own are more lonely. So is that something you've encountered, or do you believe the idea that you can be much more lonely in a bad relationship than actually on your own?
That's a really good point, Debbie, because some of my loneliest times were when I was unhappy in my marriage or in a relationship, when that feeling of isolation was so pervasive, it really did play with my mental health. Being lonely on your own is for me, it feels different. And just because I'm alone doesn't mean I am lonely. And I think that's something I wish my couple friends would understand sometimes, that, I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. I do get lonely. I'm not perfect. Christmas is a killer for me. I'm still a bit of a romantic at heart. And that week on the run up to Christmas, when, you know, the TV ads, Love Actually is back on TV, and, you know, I'm feeling, fear of failure again. And I do feel a little bit lonely, but I learned to articulate my feelings. You know, I say to people, oh, it's a rubbish time for me. Do you want to come for coffee? Or I'll say, can I come to you? And I think this is something single people have to get better at, putting it out there that you're feeling pretty rubbish, or you're feeling in need of company. And it is hard. It takes practice to be good at being single, but it is about being honest and not covering it all up. You know, there are 24.3 million people who are single. That's over 36% of the UK and Ireland. So 24.3 million of us are single. Some of us might be dating. I don't know. The stats don't go down that far. But you're not alone. And I think just opening up to people and saying, oh, I'm having a rough time at the moment. Or when you're poorly. Sorry, you asked me a question. I get so excited about things. When I'm poorly, that's when I feel really lonely. I suffer from migraines, and normally I can cope with them. But a year or so ago, I had 25 migraines in 30 days. I was a mess. I felt rubbish. I could hardly look after myself, and I needed some medication that was in the kitchen. I was in bed. I couldn't stand up, but I needed medication. So I slid down the stairs on my bottom, you know, like when you're a kid. And I got to the kitchen, and the kitchen's tiled. And I slid on there, and my nightie was up around my nether regions by then, and the floor was cold. I just burst into tears because I felt so helpless and so useless. And I really wished I was with somebody, but it was a fleeting moment. And I think you build your resilience the more you practice, and resilience is so important. And I urge everybody who's single just to practice something that scares you every day. even if it's saying hello to a stranger.
It's interesting as well, isn't it? There's resilience, and I think your point about resourcing as well, you know, when you're single, because if you have been in a relationship for a long time and you're used to, you know, splitting the thick chores, whatever that is, whether it's cooking, putting the bins out, changing the light bulbs, you know, I can do most of that, but I can't, I'm just quite small, I can't change my light bulbs. So, you know, I either have to ask a very kind friend to come around and change them, which is pretty, you know, not great to have to ask, or you just find really good, you know, handyman people that can come. And so I think it's actually saying, I can live this life fully, don't actually have to have a partner. If I like to have a partner, if I want to be with someone, fantastic, but I'm resourced around me, and as you say, Julia, resilient within me to really live this life fully. And I think that for me has been a really important part of this journey.
Yeah, and it's a
Can
very
I ask you
point.
both a question? Just a question, really interesting. Do you still think, oh, I would like to find a partner if the right person came along? Or is it that actually the kind of acceptance that this is the life I want now? And
some of it depends on my mood. I would like to think that there is somebody there for me, and that I'm not anti-dating at all in any way, shape or form, but that person is going to have to enrich my life, not detract from my life. And it may be we have an unconventional relationship. You know, you hear of couples living next door to each other. I quite like the sound of that because, you know, I have my house just so. I've got a stupidly busy week this week. I'm in and out, and it's not the tidiest, but I know I'll tidy it up at the weekend. That's fine. So I'm just doing what I need for me to get me through this week. Might make me sound very selfish. I like to think I'm not a selfish person, but I make my life work for me. Gary Lineker was on a podcast before all the football thing, or the refugee thing, with Gabby Logan. I listened to her midlife podcast. It's very good. And he is practicing the single life at the moment. And he said he's got no energy to move a relationship up to the next level. And I thought that was really interesting. You know, working at a relationship takes a lot of energy. And when those relationships go bad, it takes a lot of energy to come out of it. So at the moment, the energy I've got, I just want to live my best life.
I think it's an interesting one, what you say, just from my perspective, Debbie, to answer your question, but to pick up and link to what Julia's just said. For me, it's much more now about relationship rather than partnership, if that makes sense. So I think the minute you start saying, you know, finding a partner, you know, or husband or whatever, that's very different to saying, I value relationships. I value, and I have some amazing girlfriends. I have some amazing guy friends. My exes are all great friends and amazing. And I just, I think it's just having a rich set of relationships for me. If I meet someone and they turn into some other, perhaps, you know, more partnership oriented relationship, great. But I think it's really valuing the different types of relationships you have, and giving and receiving of that. And I think that's really important. And I was just interested, you said about the bias, Julia, at the beginning on that, because I think as much women ask me this as men, in fact more women ask me this than men. When we meet up for a drink, people say, so are you seeing someone?
Oh my word.
You're like, is that the very first thing that is interesting about me? Am I seeing someone?
I know.
And I said,
I'm fine, thank you. Are you seeing someone?
Exactly. I said to Debbie, I have this little beer mat sort of thing, whatever it is, I don't know, on my table at home, and it says, you know, when people ask me if I'm seeing someone, I presume they mean I'm seeing my psychiatrist. It's like, you know, I'm not, I do see other people in my life. Do you know what I mean? I just think this whole thing is, it feels like it's the very first thing. And in fact, the most important thing about people is that they have someone else in them. And that's the bit I think that is really tricky in society, to change and change people's perceptions on. That the very first thing is, how are you? What are you up to? What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, much later down the line, yeah. So what's happening in your life? Are you seeing anyone, or what are you doing with your life? Are you traveling? You know, just not.
You see
Yeah. I find it that they say the older ones say that more, and you know, it's like, oh, when you say no, it's like, oh.
Yeah, oh, shame for you.
Shame for you. I'm sure someone will come along at some point and it's like, oh, make me feel good, why don't you? And
You're actually right.
I guess that's something we've all been brought up with, isn't it? That, you know, like kind of when we were young, that kind of thing about, you know, you're on the shelf at a certain age if you haven't got married, all that kind of thing. I'm sure that's still, and maybe this next generation that's different for maybe that kind of conventional relationship is more acceptable in these next generations coming up. So one thing, because we're just coming to the end. So if there was, because I think what your mission just sounded so interesting to me and Erika, about what would be the, if you could kind of had a magic wand and you could have 3 things you could change about life that would make it easier to empower somebody who wanted to, you know, wasn't in the relationship at that moment and wanted to live a full life, what would be the 3 things you would magically create to make it easier for people?
First of all, I think some of the cultural norms that we're kind of brought into, like it's Mr. Mrs. Ms. other title, you know, let's start with Mr. Ms. And then Mrs. and then other titles. So there is an expectation that as a single woman, particularly in midlife, you're welcome at the table. I think society-wise, I think to Erika's point, you know, don't ask me if I'm seeing someone, don't let that be the first thing, you know, look at me as the person. I think economically we need to change things up. You know, as a single person, I get 25% off my what's it, not poll tax, what do we call it? Council tax, yeah, 25% off. Well, actually, I should have 50% off because the tax is based on 2 adults sharing a house and maybe a family as well. You know, I don't get paid anymore just because I'm single. So don't charge me more just because I'm single. And then, you know, in restaurants, have these tables for one. Holidays, get rid of the single supplements. Again, I don't earn more. Therefore, don't charge me more to go on holiday. So culturally, we need to shift into this person first, couple second, and then the whole work thing. Well, I think I've banged on about that. But if I could wave my magic wand for single people, is get confident, you know, make new friends bring in new energy, smile, be resilient, get rid of any feeling of failure, and don't be harsh on yourself. You know, lower your expectations of what society think you should be. You just be happy with yourself and be single.
That's lovely, Julia. Thank you. Erika, do you have anything else?
No, I totally agree with that piece. I think it's, as we said, I think it's about setting yourself up for living life to the full, whatever that means. And I think your point about confidence, Julia, is a good one. I think it's, you know, it's fundamentally quite hard to build confidence if you've been knocked down a lot. Yeah. And I think your point about being the difference between being alone and lonely is very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That I think helps build confidence, is if you can move away from the loneliness.
Yeah. And take those baby steps. I didn't get here overnight. My first holiday on my own, I was scared stiff, but just those little steps, and then celebrate the little wins, the little moments. And join the revolution. Join Jessie Socials.
Great. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.